On the day I found out I was pregnant, my husband's god sister, Elara, posted a picture of her pregnant belly on social media. As long as you're loved, you can still be a beautiful girl even when you're pregnant. In the photo, she was wearing only lace lingerie, leaning against a man while taking a selfie. The man's distinct hand rested on her smooth pregnant belly. On his ring finger was a ring identical to the one on my hand. I commented, "Congratulations." The next second, Elara called in a panic, apologizing and saying she posted the picture to provoke her boyfriend after a fight. Adrien took his phone and scolded me coldly. "You can't have a child yourself and now you're breaking down because someone else is pregnant. With jealousy this strong, no wonder you can't get pregnant." 5 minutes later, Elara updated her status again. "From now on, I'll have 2 strong men to protect me, one big and one small." Adrien immediately liked her post. I took off my wedding ring, threw it into the roadside bushes, and went back to the hospital to schedule an abortion. Adrien unusually came home before 9. Noticing the unopened medicinal box in the trash can, his brow furrowed slightly. Nothing better to do. Throwing a tantrum over something so small. I calmly replied, "I'm not angry." He sneered, "You threw away the fertility medicine, and you call that not angry? Do whatever you want. After all, you're the one desperate about not getting pregnant, not me." I was just about to take out the pregnancy report, but he handed me a dark-colored shoebox first. "Elara sent this for you. This little girl hasn't been through much. Seeing you upset, she got so scared that she even mentioned something as foolish as abortion. She insisted on sending you something to apologize." He opened the box. Inside was a pair of YSL high heels. However, they were clearly worn, with scuff soles and chipped paint on the outside of the heel. "Take them, these shoes aren't cheap." Elara barely wore them a few times. She just started working and can't afford much. Giving you these shoes is already a big sacrifice. I couldn't help but laugh. Just half an hour before Adrien got home, Elara had posted on social media, proudly showing off her new Chanel slippers. "The best brother in the world. Thank you for your blatant favoritism, it gives me the confidence to flaunt it so openly." When I refused to accept the shoes, Adrien became annoyed. "Kieran, what's wrong with you again? You're almost 30, is it really necessary to make things hard for a young innocent girl?" He tossed the box at me, and it hit me squarely on the head. I let out a muffled groan, clutching my forehead as tears welled up in the corners of my eyes. Adrien's expression turned panicked. "I didn't mean to, let me take a look." I pulled away from his hand as he tried to touch me, speaking softly, "I'm fine." He forcefully pried open my fingers from where I was holding my forehead, and saw the swelling. His face darkened. "You call this fine? Wait here. I'll go get an ice pack." Before I could stop him, his phone suddenly rang. The screen lit up, displaying the contact name. "Little troublemaker. Adrien." Hearing Elara's sobbing voice, Adrien immediately tensed up. "Elara, don't worry, take your time and tell me what's wrong." Elara was sobbing on the other end. "My stomach hurts. I want to go to the hospital, but I got on the wrong subway and now I don't even know where I am." Adrien frowned. "Why didn't you call me when you were heading to the hospital? Didn't we agree I'd drive you there?" Elara hesitated, her voice faltering. I was dumb again today and upset Kieran, so I didn't want to bother you too." Adrien, with a serious expression, told her, "Elara, you're my only sister. No one's business is more important than yours. Send me your location on WhatsApp, I'll come pick you up." "No, Adrien, I can find the hospital on my own." "Really?" she protested. "Don't forget today is Kieran's ovulation day. Stay with her and maybe she'll give me a sweet little niece soon." Adrien chuckled softly. "Silly girl, it's not like doing it once more will guarantee pregnancy. Your situation is more urgent. Send me your location now." After hanging up the phone, he shot a reproachful glance at me. "Did you hear that? Elara cares about much, yet you're always so suspicious. I'll take her to the hospital and bring back an ice pack for you." He grabbed the car keys and hurried out the door. "Adrien, wait a second," I called after him. "You," so he snapped, unable to hold back any longer. "Kieran, when will you be done? This is a matter of 2 lives. Don't let your jealousy go too far." I didn't defend myself. Instead, I went to the closet. "Elara's insurance card. Don't forget it," and pulled out a card from the coat he wore a few days ago. Elara couldn't register on her own, so her insurance card was with Adrien. He looked at me, clearly surprised. After a moment, he finally reached out to take it. "Thank you." He seemed to want to say more, but I interrupted him. "Take care." I raised my hand and adjusted his collar, just like I always did when sending him off. I knew this would be the last time. He looked at my face as if a flicker of emotion passed through him. Suddenly, he grabbed my hand and pulled me close to his chest. "Kieran, I'll be back soon. Wait for me. I didn't wait for him. After sending a message to a familiar lawyer to inquire about divorce, I went to bed early. The sound of a WhatsApp notification woke me in the middle of the night. I checked the time, it was already 1. Sure enough, the space beside me was empty. I opened my phone and saw that Elara had sent me several messages. My big brother is so handsome. I want to eat him up while he's sleeping. Attached was a photo of Adrien sleeping peacefully. Adrien was resting on her pink cartoon pillow, his messy hair falling over his forehead, eyes tightly closed and his thin lips slightly pursed. Getting pregnant on the same day as my husband's mistress. Seeing that the chat box indicated the other party is typing, Elara quickly deleted her messages. She sent me a cute kitten meme pleading for mercy. I meant to send it to my best friend but accidentally sent it to you. Adrien is asleep, I was just playing around and took a sneak photo. Don't blame him, okay? She probably thought I would immediately call Adrien to confront him like I used to. But this time, I chose to block her and went back to sleep. Whether she was just joking or being serious, I didn't care anymore. The next day, Adrien and Elara came to the office together. Elara was cautiously protecting her belly but still stumbled, her face turning pale with fright. Adrien simply picked her up and carried her into the office. Elara blushed, wrapping her arms around his neck and shot a triumphant glance in my direction. Colleagues nearby leaned in, whispering gossip. Elara can't even tell a copier from a shredder, yet she's been the boss's assistant for half a year. Do you think Mr. Whitlock really has feelings for her? I was busy chatting with my lawyer and casually nodded in agreement. Maybe. Just as I finished speaking, a familiar voice called out, "Kieran, come here." I turned around and saw Adrien standing behind me, looking at me coldly. No one in the company knew that Adrien and I were married. He forbade office romances, so on the surface, I was just an elder in the company. To avoid suspicion, he always treated me indifferently at work. There was one time, I had a high fever of 40 degrees Celsius and could barely walk. In a daze, I found Adrien and asked him to take me to the hospital. But he was afraid of what his subordinates would say, so he quickly shook off my hand and told me to ask HR for leave. Yet whenever Elara complained of a stomach ache, Adrien would skip meetings and immediately take her to the hospital for an examination. I followed Adrien into the office. Elara was arranged by him to rest in the partition. With no one around, Adrien came over and held my hand, saying in a deep voice, "Are you still angry?" I pulled my hand away, my tone distant. "I told you, I'm not angry." He rested his hand on my shoulder, his gaze intense. "Still being stubborn? You didn't call me at all last night, not a single message, and yet you dare say you're not angry." I was taken aback, replying, "But Elara was there, she's your assistant, so of course she would take good care of you." Anger flared in his eyes as he tightened his grip on my shoulder. I winced in pain, trying to break free from his hold, but in my struggle, he threw me onto the sofa. As I pushed myself up, I felt something. I instinctively pulled at it and extracted a pink lace bra from the sofa's crevice. Adrien's anger vanished in an instant when he saw it. I had no interest in hearing his explanation. I tossed the bra back onto the sofa and said lightly, "If there's nothing else, I'll be leaving now, Mr. Whitlock." After work, I was getting ready to meet a client when Adrien's car slowly came to a stop in front of me. "Get in," he said. "I'll take Elara home first and then take you to the seafood buffet on Maple Road." Elara poked her head out from the passenger seat, her bright smile greeting me. "Sorry, Kieran, I'm here to hitch a for." Getting pregnant on the same day as my husband's mistress, I was busy hailing a cab and casually replied, "You guys go ahead, I'm allergic to seafood." Adrien's face instantly darkened. He certainly knew that I had never been allergic to seafood. That seafood buffet was actually one of my favorites. With a gloomy expression on his face, he was about to say something, but I didn't look at him again. I sidestepped his car and got into a taxi on the other side of the road. C03, I didn't expect Adrien to chase after me to the restaurant with Elara. The client hadn't arrived yet, and they took a seat across from me. Feeling perplexed, I bluntly asked them to leave. "I have an appointment with Mr. Everhart from Innova Technology." Adrien raised an eyebrow. "Has Mr. Everhart ever said he doesn't want to see me?" I fell silent and didn't push them out any further. After all, Adrien was still my boss. During the meal, Mr. Everhart instructed his assistant to open a bottle of good wine. I frowned, recalling the day I scheduled the abortion. The doctor had repeatedly confirmed with me, "After your miscarriage from the car accident, your uterus was already damaged. It's a miracle you can get pregnant again this time. If you have another miscarriage, you might never have the chance to get pregnant again." I pressed my lips together, about to politely decline the drink when Elara suddenly spoke up with a bright smile. I've heard others say that Kieran has a particularly strong tolerance for alcohol. Today, I finally get to see it. Her eyes sparkled with admiration, her expression innocent and carefree. I coldly replied, "Who told you that?" Elara's smile froze and she looked nervously at Adrien. "Did I say something wrong again?" Adrien ruffled her hair, then turned to me, his tone cold as he ordered, "Kieran, it's just a glass of wine. You're not a little girl anymore, so stop being so shy." A chill swept through my heart. Meeting his cold gaze, I forced a smile and said, word for word, "Mr. Whitlock, I can't drink because I'm pregnant." Everyone in the room froze. Elara was the first to react. She quickly masked the surprise in her eyes and stood up to toast me. "Congratulations, Kieran." Just as she was about to sip her drink, Adrien quickly stopped her. "Elara, you're pregnant. You can't drink." For once, Elara didn't obediently listen to him. "No, I want to drink. Ever since I came to Duskmire, I've unintentionally made you unhappy. This glass of wine is my apology to you, Kieran." She became increasingly excited and tilted her head back, gulping the wine down. Immediately afterward, her brow furrowed as she started to cough violently, her cheeks flushing and tears welling in her eyes. Adrien watched with concern, his heart aching for her. He suddenly stood up, pointing an angry finger at me. "Are you satisfied now? Only someone as innocent as Elara would believe your words. If anything happens to the baby in her belly, I will never forgive you." One lazily lifted my eyelids and replied indifferently, "Do as you please." I said an apology to Mr. Everhart and turned to leave. Adrien's voice rang sharply behind me. "Kieran, I've tolerated you for a long time. In your eyes, everything Elara does is wrong. If you truly can't accept her, then why not just get a divorce?" I was somewhat surprised but quickly felt relieved. After 5 years of marriage, he had never publicly acknowledged our relationship. Now, to force me to back down in front of Elara, he had taken the initiative to admit it. I gazed at his handsome face twisted in anger and nodded slowly. "Fine, let's get a divorce." Getting pregnant on the same day as my husband's mistress, with that, I walked out of the private room without looking back. After leaving the restaurant, I called the divorce lawyer. During the conversation, a sudden bright light flashed into my eyes. A car came charging toward me with unstoppable force. A wave of immense fear engulfed me. My legs went weak and I fell backward. Just as the car was about to hit me, the driver slammed on the brakes, swiftly swerving away and speeding off, leaving me sitting on the ground. A girl passing by came over to help me. The moment her hand touched my waist, she screamed, "Oh my God! Why are you bleeding so much?" I looked down in confusion and saw a large pool of blood beneath me. In the hospital, the doctor urged me to contact my family. I gripped my phone tightly, my gaze lingering on Adrien's number before dialing the lawyer. I vividly remembered that the car that had charged at me had the same license plate number as Adrien's. It was the one we had chosen together. C04. I stayed in the hospital until noon the next day. During my hospitalization, Adrien only sent me one message: "The ceiling at Elara's house is leaking, so I'm taking her home to stay." I immediately recognized that this was sent by Elara using Adrien's phone. When I got back home, I entered the door code incorrectly. As I was about to try again, the door opened from the inside. Elara peeked out from behind the door, wearing my apron. "Kieran, you're finally back." The previous code was too complicated, I couldn't remember it, so Adrien changed it to my birthday. "Sit down, Kieran, I'll get you some water." She ushered me into the house, clearly acting like the mistress of the place. The aroma of food wafted through the air as she excitedly ran to the kitchen door and called out to the person. Adrien walked out, wearing the matching couple's apron. Inside, "Adrien, Kieran is back." I had bought it for him, but he had thought it was childish and never wore it once. Now that I saw him in it, I found it rather ugly. He glanced at me and gently told Elara to go back to her room. Elara obediently nodded and took a bag of snack peanuts into my bedroom. The living room was left with just Adrien and me. He wore a stern expression as he said, "So you know how to come back." I ignored the blame in his eyes and thoughtfully asked, "Is Elara eating peanuts?" I remembered that when Elara was first pregnant, Adrien had asked me to prepare pregnancy meals for her. Because there were a few peanuts sprinkled in the dish, she had a severe allergic reaction, which led Adrien to explode in anger at me. Adrien frowned, looking confused. "What are you talking about?" I knew he had already forgotten about this incident and didn't want to explain it to him. "It's nothing." He didn't press further and scanned me up and down. "All right, you should go put on some makeup and get ready. Today is Elara's birthday and I've reserved a private room at Omega Hall." He paused for a moment and added, "Just light makeup will do, don't overshadow the birthday girl." Without thinking, I replied, "I don't have time. You guys go ahead." Adrien's frown deepened. Elara has already told her friends that it's her brother and sister-in-law hosting her birthday party. If you're absent, where will she put her face? He continued, I know you're jealous of her youth and ability to have children, but not being able to get pregnant isn't Elara's fault. Is it really worthwhile for you to compete with her all the time? Here's the deal, tonight you go celebrate her birthday and another day, I'll grant you a wish. You can choose any destination you want to travel to. I remained silent for a moment, then smiled and agreed, all right. That evening, I put on a stunning makeup look and walked into the Omega Hall private room on time. When Adrien saw me, he momentarily lost his composure and came over to hold my hand. Elara's expression changed slightly, but she quickly adjusted her demeanor and confidently introduced me to her friends. Her long-distance boyfriend, who often argued with her, sat lazily in the corner, smoking. The waiter wheeled in the 3-tier cake Adrien had ordered for her. As she made her wish, she clasped her hands together, her smile serene like a princess. Since I came to Duskmire, my brother and sister-in-law have taken good care of me. My biggest wish is to always be a family with my brother and sister-in-law. Before she could finish, my bag fell to the ground and piece of paper slipped out. Adrien picked up the paper for me, but as soon as he saw the words post-abortion care instructions printed on tea, his face instantly turned pale. Kieran, what is this? Become SVIP. Read all SVIP stories. Adrien was utterly shocked, staring at me with a hoarse voice. When did this happen? Elara, thinking I had another argument with Adrien, stepped forward to mediate. She forced a sweet smile, saying, all right, Adrien, don't blame her. It's my birthday today, everyone should be happy. Kieran, let me cut you a piece of cake. I took a step back to maintain my distance from her and coldly replied, no, thanks. I'm here today because Adrien promised that if I came, he would grant me a wish. I pulled out the divorce agreement and threw it in Adrien's face. Sign it. This is my wish. He tore the divorce agreement into shreds. Don't joke around, Kieran. You think I'll believe you re-pregnant just because of a piece of paper from a women's hospital. I corrected him, it's not a pregnancy, I've already miscarried. He suddenly raised his voice, what's the reason? Is it because I was busy taking care of Elara and you got jealous that you made me lose our child? I chuckled coldly. I did plan to abort the pregnancy. It's just that before I could go to the hospital, the child was already gone. He froze. What do you mean? Looking at my mocking expression, he suddenly recalled the incident when he drove the car at me as if struck by lightning. How is that possible? I clearly stopped the car, I didn't hit you at all. Let's go to the hospital, the baby must be fine. He grabbed my hand, trying to pull me outside. Suddenly, Elara doubled over, clutching her stomach. Adrien, my stomach really hurts. Her lips trembled, as if she were enduring immense pain. Yet instead of rushing to her side like usual, he darkened his face, erupting in anger at her. What does your stomach ache have to do with me? It's not my fault you got pregnant. You come to me every few days, are you out of your mind? Elara had never seen him like this. She stood frozen, forgetting to continue pretending to be in pain. I shook off Adrien's grip and pulled out the surgical paperwork from my bag, tossing it at him. Look, clearly the baby is gone. He took the paper, glanced at it, and didn't dare to read on. He asked me in a hoarse voice, when did you have the surgery? I sneered and said in a voice that everyone present could hear, the day you brought Elara back to our house to spend the night. Elara's boyfriend suddenly jumped up from the sofa and slapped Elara hard in the face. 45-15-08 March 5th 308 plus. I told you to make more money, not cheat on me. Elara's cheeks quickly swelled up, and she covered her face with tears. I didn't. I just stayed there for one night, I really didn't do anything else. Her boyfriend didn't believe it at all. He cursed and slapped Elara a few more times. How dare you lie to me? I've seen that there's something wrong between you and your brother. Elara's friends were all shocked and no one dared to step forward to intervene. Elara couldn't stand the beating and retorted, yes. I did it, so what? You treat me badly, can't I find a man who treats me well? I tell you, Adrien is 1,000 times better than you. Adrien shouted, Elara, shut up. He then turned around in a panic to observe my face. Kieran, don't listen to her nonsense. That night you didn't come back. I was really annoyed and didn't want to contact you first. Elara called me in the middle of the night. Since I wanted to piss you off, in a moment of impulse, I brought her home. I was going to let her sleep in the guest room, but she shamelessly came to my bedroom in the middle of the night, without any clothes on enough. I impatiently interrupted Adrien's words and glanced at him with disdain. Adrien, you're not a real man. I have no respect for you. Adrien didn't want to sign the divorce papers. I didn't argue with him and quickly asked my lawyer to file for divorce instead. I submitted my resignation, but when Adrien refused to accept it, I chose to take a vacation and return to my hometown instead. After spending so much time helping Adrien with his business, I realized I hadn't taken a proper break in ages. I stood at the front door with my suitcase, unsure whether to knock, but the door opened by itself. My mom came out with a bag of groceries. When she saw me, she stopped for a moment and her expression soured. "Why are you back alone? Where's Adrien?" Seeing that I remained silent, she let out a scoff. "Others return home in glory, but you just ran back because you couldn't 45% 150819 make it work. Did you have a fight with Adrien and come back in a huff?" As expected, my mother quickly noticed I was in a bad state but still scolded me in a sharp voice. "I must have really bad luck to have a useless daughter like you. No kids, can't keep a man, and after years of marriage, you've never sent any money home. What good are you to me?" I couldn't help but retort, "Adrien and I give you a few $100s every year." She scoffed, "Is a few $100s even money? After sleeping with him all these years, is that all you're worth? How shameless can you be? If I had known you could only give me this much money, I should have never paid for your education. I should have let you go out and earn it yourself." Her harsh words kept ringing in my ears. I silently watched her mouth move, firing off hurtful words like a machine gun. I realized that I must have been hurt too deeply outside to think I could come home and find some warmth. When I turned to leave without saying a word, my mother chased after me and called out. Before I could react, she splashed a bucket of cold water at my feet. "Your brother is about to have his winter break. Here's some water to wash away your bad luck." She added, "Don't think I don't know that Adrien's business is booming. If you don't bring back $100,000 this year, you shouldn't even think about coming home for the new year." As I walked away, I could still hear my mother shouting behind me, "Don't waste money. When your brother gets married, you need to buy him a school district apartment in Duskmire." I clenched my fists but ultimately didn't bring up the divorce. Maybe it had been too long since I came home, but I was foolish enough to hope for a word of comfort from my mom. The cuffs of my pants were wet and cold around my ankles, matching the chill in my heart. Adrien was so sure I would never leave him, perhaps because he knew he was my only safe harbor. Without him, I had nowhere to go. I didn't want to return to Duskmire, so I booked a hotel nearby. When I checked in, I realized it was the same room I once shared with Adrien. In my senior year, when we had just started dating, I remembered that on New Year's Eve, my mom had scolded and hit me over trivial matters. As the clock struck midnight, Adrien called me. I was feeling down, but I forced a smile. On the morning of the first day of the new year, my mom noticed my red, swollen eyes and angrily scolded me, calling me a harbinger of misfortune. She and my dad took my younger brother out to celebrate the new year. I sat at home, lost in thought, when suddenly I received a message from Adrien. "Look downstairs." Confused, I walked to the window and was surprised to see Adrien standing right outside my building. He had sensed something was wrong in my voice during our last call and had rushed to find me without even packing a bag, taking the night train with just his phone. When he saw me at the window, he looked up and gave me a gentle smile that melted the frost in my heart. That day, we held hands and aimlessly wandered through every street near my home. Despite the heavy snowfall and biting cold, being with him felt like I was trapped on a warm spring day. That night, we stayed in the hotel together. Outside, fireworks lit up the sky as we talked for a long time, sharing our secrets. He looked at me intently and said, "Kieran, let's get married after we graduate. I want to be with you forever. We'll be each other's only family." A knock on the door interrupted my memories. I frowned, not remembering having called for room service. When I opened the door, I thought I was dazzled. "Kieran." Adrien stood before me in a deep gray coat, tall and composed. After a brief moment of shock, I realized my travel app was linked to Adrien's email, which explained how he could easily track my whereabouts. 1 for 555-1509, June 9, 309. He probably thought I would be touched by his long journey, but I merely replied coldly, "I won't change my mind. Don't waste your effort." His eyes darkened suddenly as he shook his head and pleaded softly, "It's been so many days, you must have cooled down by now. I miss you. Let's go home." I didn't understand where he got his confidence. I felt annoyed as I said, "I say this one last time. I'm not angry. I don't want to see you again. Please leave." No matter what, Adrien refused to go. He humbled himself, admitting his mistake. "I truly realize my mistakes, and I swear I will only make this mistake once. I've already fired Elara, and I won't see her again." "Kieran, please believe me." I replied flatly, "I believe you. But the divorce has nothing to do with Elara. Even if you never cheat for the rest of your life, I 45% 150979 won't love you again. Adrien, we not compatible. He seemed to think he had heard the biggest joke. Not compatible. Kieran, you said it yourself, we are the most compatible couple in the world. I curled my lips into a mocking smile. Is that so? At the wedding, you also promised to love and care for me for a lifetime. Have you kept that promise? After I blocked the drinks for you and had a headache all night, you held me and said that once we were rich, you would never let me suffer like that again. Did you keep that promise? He was left speechless by my questions, a look of guilt crossing his face. Both Adrien and I had poor alcohol tolerance, but there were times when we had to drink for business. Especially in the early days of our startup, he had to finish his drink whenever he toasted to someone. 45150989. During that time, I had helped him fend off countless drinks at the table. In fact, many of our long-term clients now were ones I had secured for him back then. He had seen me come home after social events, suffering from a splitting headache. He knew all of this, yet he still forced me to drink with Mr. Everhart just to save face for Elara. Now, everything had changed. Those passionate vows made during our romance felt pale and ridiculous. 45% 1509. I stopped responding to him and lowered my head to close the door, but he quickly pushed his way inside. Before I could react, he suddenly pinned me against the wall, wrapping his arms around me, his voice low. Kieran, give me another chance. His once warm embrace made me feel sick now. I angrily pushed him away. Don't touch me or I'll call the police. But he remained unfazed, laughing lightly. We're married, what grounds do you have to call the police? Ignoring my resistance, his hand gently brushed against my face. Kieran, I know you're angry with me because we lost the baby, but it's okay. We can have another child and start over. 45% 150915. I frowned in disgust. Are you crazy? Stop wasting your breath. The doctor said I can't get pregnant again. He didn't believe me. The last time you miscarried, the doctor said it would be hard for you to get pregnant again, but you still managed to. I couldn't believe he had the nerve to bring up the previous miscarriage. In our first year of marriage, Adrien had a fight with his half-brother, who, in a fit of rage, drove his car into him. In that critical moment, I pushed him out of the way. He was unharmed, but I was knocked down and bled everywhere. It was only when I got to the hospital that I found out I was 4 weeks pregnant at the time. After that incident, I developed a psychological trauma. I had to hold his hand every time we crossed the street. I'm really curious about your feelings that night when you drove into me to 45% 160925. Defend Elara. What were you thinking? He fell silent, but I didn't want to let him off the hook. You were afraid to say it, so I'll say it for you. You knew exactly what I was afraid of, and you used that car accident to scare me on purpose, didn't you? His eyes were filled with deep pain. Stop talking, I know I'm a scumbag, but I really don't want to leave you. With our deep feelings, how could it just end like that? He murmured to himself as if he had made up his mind, revealing a strange smile. Kieran, I know you soft-hearted. You hate me now, but once we have a child, you'll forgive me. As he spoke, he reached for my clothing buttons and I reflexively pushed him away. I told you not to touch me. You dirty. He froze suddenly, his eyes gradually filling with a crimson hue. What did you say? He couldn't believe I would call him dirty. He once told me that when he was a child, his mother passed away early and his stepmother treated him poorly, making his life difficult. Wanting to please his stepmother and brother, there was one time when the school handed out snacks and he didn't want to eat them, bringing them home for his brother instead. But when his stepmother saw, she looked at him with disgust, slapped his hand until it turned red, snatched the snacks and crushed them underfoot. What kind of dirty thing is this? Don't feed my son anything touched by your dirty hands. This was the shadow in his heart. We once shared a close bond, confiding our secrets, so we knew each other's vulnerabilities. He never imagined that one day, I would use his secret as a sharp weapon to hurt him. He was greatly hurt, but I felt no sympathy at all. Instead, I slowly repeated, I said, you are dirty. His body trembled slightly, unable to bear the extreme pain and anger, and he suddenly raised his hand. I did not dodge. The crisp sound of a slap echoed. He involuntarily took a step back, looking at his hand in disbelief, filled with regret. I said coldly, leave. If you don't go, I'll call the police to make you leave. He wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. He lowered his hands in despair and left, looking dejected. After slapping me, Adrien lost his will to fight. He agreed to my resignation. I chose a time when he wasn't in the office to gather my things. Before leaving, I pushed open the door to Adrien's office and took our wedding photo from the desk drawer. When he first decorated the office, he had specially placed our wedding photo on his desk. But later, when Elara arrived, the decor of Adrien's office gradually changed to her preferred style. The photo was put away and replaced with cartoon figurines that Elara liked. I stood one last time in front of the floor-to-ceiling window in his office. Below, the streets were bustling with traffic. When I first arrived in Duskmire, Adrien and I stood across the street, gazing up at the towering financial building in front of us. I envisioned our future with confidence, saying, "One day, we will have our own office in this building." He tightened his grip on my hand and replied, "Kieran, trust me, I will make it happen. I won't let you down." He did achieve that dream, but still, he disappointed me. As I walked out of the building, Elara unexpectedly appeared in front of me. I recalled that Adrien had mentioned she had been fired. I noticed her once prominent baby bump had disappeared. It seemed she had been waiting specifically for me, and upon seeing me, her eyes filled with jealousy. "You shameless woman, you just can't let go of Adrien and have come back to seduce him again. Do you know what he said about you that night? He said you're almost 30 and your skin is nowhere near as tight as mine. Being with me makes him feel like he's back in his youth," she said, her head held high as if trying to gauge my reaction to anger. I merely smiled slightly and glanced at Adrien, who was not far behind her. "It seems this girl believes your words wholeheartedly. For you, she even induced an abortion for a few months old baby. If you were even a little bit of a man, you'd owe her an explanation." Adrien walked over, his face dark with anger as he looked at Elara. "Didn't he tell you to take the money and leave? Why are you still here? Get lost." Elara's eyes glistened with tears. "Adrien, is this bitch threatening you? I don't believe you have no feelings for me. That night when I asked you who was better between me and Kieran, you clearly said you preferred me." I couldn't help but laugh at her words as I watched the scene unfold. "Do you really believe anything a man says while cheating?" Elara shot me a glare. "Don't try to sow discord. Do you think mentioning divorce will win your man's heart back? You can't even have children. He will eventually break up with you." Adrien nearly exploded with anger and slapped her hard, commanding her to shut up. He turned to me and said, "Kieran, I don't want children, I only want you." I was momentarily speechless. In terms of not understanding human emotions, Elara and Adrien made a perfect pair. Feeling humiliated in front of me, Elara's face flushed with embarrassment. She opened her phone with red-rimmed eyes and said, "Adrien, I recorded everything that happened that night. I'll send it to that bitch right now." Adrien rushed over to grab her phone. In the chaos, a secretly recorded video was sent to the company group chat. I opened the video. Elara's sweet, sultry voice echoed from the phone. The two people involved in the videos in front of me turned ashen. Elara let out a desperate scream and hurriedly tried to recall the video, but it was too late. After returning home, I forwarded the saved video to my lawyer, adding a message, "Infidelity evidence +1 45 15 10. The litigation process was still ongoing. I left Duskmire and moved to Ravenglade. Former colleagues told me that Elara still clung to Adrien. She waited for him outside the office building every day after work. After the exposure of the video featuring Adrien and Elara, his reputation and credibility in the company had significantly declined. My departure also caused some trouble for the company's business. Many old clients I had worked with ended their contracts once they expired. As a result, Adrien was increasingly overwhelmed during this time. Seeing the company we had built together deteriorate like this left me feeling conflicted. The man sitting across from me noticed my distraction and pondered, "Do you want some help? Not for him, but for your old company." I politely declined. "No need, thank you, Lucian." Seeing me refuse, Lucian didn't press further and instead invited me to a concert tomorrow night. I looked at the tickets Lucian handed me and remembered that Declan Hayes was performing in Ravenglade tomorrow. When Adrien and I had just graduated, Declan Hayes had held a concert in Ravenglade. At that time, we didn't have much money and ended up listening to the whole song outside the venue. We promised each other that once we had money, we would definitely buy front row tickets. But as we gradually became more financially stable, he lost the intention to fulfill that promise. I agreed to Lucian's invitation. After the concert, I unexpectedly ran into a familiar figure. Upon seeing me, a flicker of joy passed through Adrien's eyes. "Kieran, you're here too." Lucian stepped forward slightly, positioning himself in front of me without showing any signs of it. I tugged at the hem of his shirt and said, "It's fine, just a stranger. Let's go." After saying that, I took Lucian's hand and left without looking back. 6 months after successfully obtaining the court's divorce decree, I suddenly received a call from a Duskmire number. An emergency doctor informed me that Adrien had gotten into a serious car accident after an argument with his girlfriend. Before entering the operating room, he wanted to say a few words to me. Worried that his call might be rejected if he used his own phone, he asked the doctor to call me instead. I told the doctor he must have dialed the wrong number. I don't know that person. Later, mutual acquaintances informed me that Adrien had survived the accident but suffered lasting consequences that affected some of his functions. Meanwhile, Elara had severely injured her legs and would be confined to a wheelchair for life. Elara's family pressured Adrien to take care of her forever, and the two hastily registered their marriage. After their marriage, Adrien, who had rarely drunk alcohol before, began to drink heavily and ignored Elara. One day, while drunk, he accidentally set fire to the house while burning paper money. Neither he nor Elara managed to escape. Ironically, that day was the anniversary of the date when he crashed into me, leading to my miscarriage. The end.